detail. But in the meantime, let me just go forward with this quite quickly. So I want to be really respectful of everyone's time. I appreciate everyone sort of coming this morning. So I don't think you need a particular reminder that today's the 27th of February. I am going to be talking about technology and the commercialization of technology. And it doesn't always have to be commercialization, but essentially I want to get technology out of the lab and onto the market and onto the hands of, let's say, real people as quickly as possible. So even if it's like a sort of European project or an SBIR or something like that, which they have in the US, how do we get this technology out of the lab as quickly as possible? And in some aspects, commercialize it. In other aspects, it's just kind of serving the purpose. So I kind of got a subtitle here, which is the 2-year commercialization productization of technology. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here. But today I'm going to talk mostly about point of care, point of need, rapid diagnostic testing, which kind of has this kind of form factor. And when I use the term OEM, it means original equipment manufacturer. So it sort of reflects ZP's business model. ZP's business model is to be a contract developer, contract manufacturer for other companies. And you'll see that that's inherent in the technology stack that I talk about today. I'm not going to talk about wearables today. This is an example. Some of you may not be able to see my camera, but I will send you a recording afterwards anyway. This is a wearable watch. It's actually got a micro needles that fit on the back of the watch. There was just an FDA statement this week that just said if you want to do glucose monitoring, if you're not breaking the skin, and that means getting to the interstitial fluid, then the FDA is warning people about these sort of non-invasive glucose monitoring watches. That's a side note anyway, but today we'll mostly be talking about IVD, in vitro diagnostics, but that can also mean point of need testing. So even though we're using a kind of form factor that looks a lot like a sort of glucose meter, you've got a sensor, you've got the electronics, and then these electronics, by the way, do talk to an app. So later on, if you're watching this on a screen, you'll be able to scan a QR code because the app is available either on the Google Play Store or also on the Apple Android Store. And I won't be talking about wearables too much today, but just sort of FYI, ZP, at least me personally, have had over 15 years experience in wearables. So I've got a bit of a thing here, the 2-year startup manifesto, and I'll describe what I really mean by that. If you're talking about doing technology development, you've got to spend with time, and you can sort of show a curve that says that the spend, the more advanced your technology becomes, essentially the spend that you're having to spend to get it there is actually going up all of the time. And I think in order of priority, people tend to sort of focus on the technology, they tend to focus on the manufacturing, they tend to focus on the business. So when I start holding up this kind of SenseItAll platform to my camera, what I'm trying to say is we need to leapfrog some of this, especially on the technology and the manufacturing, because it's the business that actually people don't focus upon. And it's really, I think it was Jeff Bezos says, good idea, but good enactment upon those ideas is important. People spend so much time on the technology that they actually don't cover the other aspects of what makes technology work. Now, if you look at something called technology readiness levels, I'm not going to spell all these technology readiness levels out, but this is a NASA principle, and you kind of go from 1 to 9, and most projects or most products or most startups or most internal efforts all trying to come up this technology readiness level. Everyone's trying to get to 9, but I generally think that you can actually leapfrog a lot of this. I would say that I'm biased. I'm here talking about a platform that we call the SenseItAll. But I think the problem when we first set up ZP, I think the problem I saw was that actually every time somebody wants to develop some sort of rapid test assay, they start at the beginning and they move linearly through all these steps. And I kind of realized that everyone is reinventing the wheel, and everyone says, "Oh, I don't want to reinvent the wheel." Well, but everyone does it. They keep reinventing different electronics, different screen printed electrodes, but all getting to the same point, let's say. And they'll tell their investors that maybe that will take them 5 years. In reality, most people to go up, along this line, you can actually find themselves spending 10 to 15 years. And even at the end of it, your probability of success, your failure rate is actually 90%. And so therefore your success rate is basically, your probability of being successful after all of that time and money spent is probably about 10%. It's no criticism of anyone, these are the real statistics of, failure rate and success rate, let's say. So at ZP, we really want people to focus more on the business. The manufacturing is something that we already have, and as a contract developer, contract manufacturer, that's our whole sort of raison d'etre is to do manufacturing, and actually the technology. Now there are aspects of the technology that you definitely have to do, and I will play those out or discuss them. But there are aspects of technology that you definitely do not have to do, and they have been done before, and they're also done at ZP now, let's say. So we want more eyes on the business aspect of things, as opposed to everyone gets very myopic or short-sighted on the manufacturing and technology. And we think that it's 10 to 15 years to get products to market. It's basically ridiculous. Within a 15-year period, here's a bit of a personal comment, but I've had 3 children in less than 15 years. So 15 years is too long to develop products, to be honest with you, because by the time you get to market, the market's significantly changed. Especially these days, I think the market changes quicker than ever. So I think it's much more realistic. You've actually got a plan for having a 2-year timeline in order from sort of start of program to maybe getting regulatory approval, let's say. Now, not all of you will need regulatory approval because you're going to different markets, maybe CE marking or just getting on the market. But you've got to have a much shorter timeline in mind because the world moves a lot quicker, and this 10 to 15 years, when people finally fail, is kind of ridiculous. And it also is a personal comment to all of you. Life is short. You can't spend 15 years failing slowly. You've got to fail fast or succeed fast. So in order to truncate all this down, this means that people are working today, taking 10 to 15 years going through all these technology readiness levels. And so at ZP with the SenseItAll platform, we're trying to say, okay, let's get rid of the basic principles. Let's get rid of the technology concept. Let's get rid of system prototype. System prototype is in my hand. That's a system prototype. System complete and qualified. That's something that the SenseItAll platform does. System deployed. You'll see today that the app that drives this technology platform is already deployed. It does leave you with things, but it leaves you with things that are the more value add. And so I would argue that the value add is your proof of concept. What is this new assay? What is this new application that you're working on? What's the sample type? Then there's technology validation in the lab. You do have to show that you have signal versus concentration, for example. You have to, most importantly, and what we're really trying to do is get people out of that lab as quickly as possible. So if I want to do heavy metal detection in deep wells in Bangladesh, stop testing in the lab, get some proof of principle in the lab, and get that technology out to those wells in Bangladesh. Otherwise, you're never going to make a real impact. Another example, people can spend several years doing drugs of abuse testing, but never actually put it in the hands of a border law enforcement agent who can actually check that this thing actually works. So it's really important to get out of that lab and into the real world as quickly as possible. And the reason it's quite hard is because what we do deliver to people for testing is really quite kludgy. It's sort of some screen printed electrodes from a third party that you've therefore functionalized into some sensor, a potentiostat from somebody else, and none of it has a nice user interface. Now you will see a nice user interface today, and then you can sort of essentially demonstrate that technology out in the real world. So if you're going to condense 10 to 15 years down to 2 years, you have to cut away lots of things. And how do we do that? Well, at ZP, we're super biased. We've got the SenseItAll platform, and we think that actually it will do that. Otherwise, I can promise you, if you tell the investor you'll take 5 years, it'll probably end up taking 10 years. When you get to the market's already changed. Something that's really important that actually this platform allows as well is whether you're delivering for projects or you're delivering to customers, there's logistics, that you've got somebody who needs this technology. If it was in business, you do a sale. And then most of the time, you actually end up having to hire something like 3 to 4 people at least to do the logistics of order fulfillment. This is something that nobody really thinks about. They just think, oh, well, I'll just get this technology done and then I'll sell it. No, people actually, I say literally put it in a box, and I've got a box behind me now. So, for example, when we're shipping this platform, we're shipping in boxes like this, but the label has to be made, the courier has to be booked, the thing has to be built. So order fulfillment is something that people really don't think too much about. But if you're working with ZP and our SenseItAll platform, then we are manufacturing screen printed electrodes and biosensors already. We're already manufacturing this SenseItAll platform. We're shipping it daily, and put them in boxes and shipping them out is something that we do. And otherwise, you're having to build a business that will do this, but you're sort of carrying the cost of those 3 to 4 people for no real value add. There is a certain place where your value add is, and I'll hopefully emphasize that in a bit. Your value add is really in the assay, in the method file, in the calibration routine, in the way that you express the data to the final end user, and actually winning market penetration. These are value adds. Some of this order fulfillment and technology development is not such a value add. Why do we want people to focus more on the business and get onto platforms like ours in order to get to market? This is the product life cycle. So if you're selling a new technology, you'll find enthusiasts. You will sell sort of 2 and 3 to an enthusiast. You may sell 10 or 15 systems to visionaries. These are people who can see your direction, see where you're going. But you really want to reach these pragmatists. And then there's a very hard part of the sector now. This is conservatives who need a lot of peer-to-peer reviews to say, oh yeah, this technology is really good. And then you've got these people who are called the skeptics, who are, well, this is not the way we do it. And you probably have to wait for some of these people to retire in order to actually sell their technology into those businesses. But this is a product life cycle, so you'll find people, and most of the time, actually, when you're doing your startup, you're really talking to the enthusiastic people, and the skeptic people are not even, contacting you, let's say. But there's actually a bit of a gap here, which is that the pragmatists are waiting for the visionaries to have actually tested that system for quite a while. So you really need to be focused on the business aspect, because there's a gap here. There's a book called Crossing the Chasm, which talks about this. There's this gap. And most people are so busy developing the technologies that they have no vision that actually this is going to happen. So you have to get out there doing what's called business development as quickly as possible, because you've got to understand that, yeah, you can have all this enthusiasm, but actually most of the people you want to sell to are called pragmatists, and you already need to be developing your marketing strategies. So you only have a certain amount of intellect or bandwidth in order to express that intellect. And too many people are spending too much time on the technology and spending too much time on the manufacturing. And I think investors and government policies are actually around you developing technologies and manufacturing. But actually, why do we have this? If this was such a successful model, why do 90% of startups actually fail? Because actually, they're really failing on the business side of things. So again, I am biased. We do have a platform called SenseItAll, and I think it's a really rapid way of getting really up the technology readiness levels and leapfrog in the manufacturing and logistics levels as well. That said, this is the platform itself. It's called SenseItAll. If you've got a smartphone, I appreciate if you're watching this on your smart device, then it's not going to really help. But I will send everyone who's here today a recording of this. This is the SenseItAll app. You can scan this. In fact, I can do it off my phone now. You can scan this, and it will, if you've got an Android, that is, and it will install it on your Android device. I can just do it on mine, yeah. And if you've got a Apple, then you can scan this, or an iOS system, I should say, an iOS device. You can scan this QR code. This means that the technology I'm talking today is already deployed on the Android store and the Apple store. But you're going to see that this is a deployment app, and it's actually a multi-analyte system. And I will sort of play that a bit now. So what I mean by that is, once you've got that app installed, that's a deployment app. That puts essentially the framework onto the phone. So you can watch the video later on and install that app. At which point now the app will actually ask to scan another code, and each one of these codes, some of you may be able to see my camera today. I've got some sensors in front of me at the moment, and just to the edge of them, we've got this QR code. So every time we ship, and it could be shipping your sensors, for example, or screen printed electrodes for your application, we put a little QR code on there. So when the user goes to run the assay, they can scan the QR code. So this one little device, which I'm now holding in my hand, some of you may be able to see my camera, hopefully, and if later on you'll see the recording anyway. This device that I'm holding in my hand, it's driven by the app, and you can do today on it chili. I don't expect you want to do chili, but you can do ginger. I know chili and ginger seem not very applicable to many of you, some of you will actually have organic molecules that you're trying to target. So don't think of that as chili. Think of that as capsaicin. It's an organic molecule. Don't think of that as ginger. Think of that as a gingerol. It's an organic molecule. So some of you will have small molecules as your targets. Nitrate is a nice example because nitrate is actually an anion. It's obviously linked. And this is where we start getting into this whole conversation, see, because ZP has a nitrate sensor, and actually it works on the SenseItAll platform. But we want people to adopt this so that, some of you want agricultural applications, some of you want freshwater applications, some of you want seawater applications. Every application demands some science and engineering to be done. But what you find out is rather than people focusing on those demands of the application, they're actually trying to build a nitrate sensor and the hardware first of all, in order to then go and solve the real world problems, which is how much chloride is in that sample? How do I get the nitrate out to the soil? So we're trying to move people on from fundamental development to actually application, worrying about the application. And that's where, and the closer you get to the end user, by the way, that's where the real value is unlocked. When you're in your lab, that's not so much a value add. When you're helping real people, that's the value add. I'm just saying that for every, if you scan the code, if you scan this QR code, it'll do chili, ginger. If you scan this one, it'll do nitrate. If you do this one, it'll do total antioxidative capacity. If you do this one, it will do glucose. If you do this one, it will do potassium, which is quite nice because some of these are small molecule. This one is enzyme based. This one's a cation. It's what's called an ISE, an ion selective electrode. But we know that many of you are aspiring or are entrepreneurs and you don't want our brand on your product. So, you've got so in the end, you'll have your own brand, you'll have your own sensor potentially, you'll definitely have your own assay. When I buy own assay, is it going to be amperometric, potentiometric? Is it going to be voltammetric, square wave voltammetry, differential pulse voltammetry, maybe cyclovoltammetry? But you also have your own calibration routine. For example, if I'm trying to measure nitrate in soil or nitrate in seawater or nitrate in freshwater, those are definitely different calibration routines. And so we actually have a QR code or what I call here your assay. If you scan that later on while watching the video, you'll find out that actually it has very little to do with ZP, and that's how you would very quickly deploy. Because what we're trying to say is that you think that deployment for you with real customers is some years off, but actually it's not. It can be actually a few months off. Now, the first deployment might not be the best technology ever, but at least you're getting it into the hands of real people. So, for example, if you scan that last QR code that came up just then, we can change the SenseItAll name here. We can change the logo here. We can change the colors here. We can change the names. So all these kind of fields, if I can call them that, can be changed. Test settings, everything could be changed. So very quickly, the fact is those apps already exist on the Android store and the iOS store. So you can already software deployments happened. But then you can actually as soon as somebody gets a strip of sensors from you, you put a little QR code in here. That QR code will then guide the app to actually reskin everything, and it becomes your app. And if it's a EU project, then it can have that, the project name on it. So technology stack that we've got, and we will demo this, by the way, there is going to be 3 demonstrations run. I should have said that earlier on. But the technology stack that we have is meters, screen printed electrodes. I did get somebody the other day said, "Oh, you do screen printed electrodes?" I was amazed. In fact, I think we do the world's best screen printed electrodes. Again, I'm biased, but it simply comes from the fact that ZP uses the biggest consumer of ZP screen printed electrodes is ZP. We've got gold, carbon, and platinum. If you've ever got the choice, always develop on carbon. Carbon is so much lower cost, and of course, we do have carbon screen printed electrodes. We have the app. We have the cloud. I suppose this is the first time I've talked about this. Every time we run an assay, and you'll see it today in the demonstration. Every time we run an assay, all the data goes to a cloud, and it's hidden behind your username and password, so we can't see it. But that's really important because if you're developing a modern technology, even if it's for sort of detecting drugs of abuse or it's detecting concentration of drugs in a clinical trial, getting the raw data, and I'm not meaning clinical, I'm not meaning necessarily patient data. I don't need the name and address of patients. I just mean the raw signal from that sensor. If you can get hold of that It really helps you with quality control, and it really helps you with business models. So you can essentially sell the cloud as part of your kind of revenue. But so, for example, today, you know, I'm helping people in India and I'm helping people in California. But the fact is, every time they do a test, the data goes to the cloud. They can share it with me, not by emailing it to me, by allowing me access to the cloud. And actually, it means I can support them in real time. So if any of you are doing those kind of developments, seeing that data in real time is really important. Anyway, the cloud's called Julie, and it's got an API, an application program interface. If you don't know what an API is, I mean, this is the glue that sticks everything together in the modern world. Whenever you make an electronic payment, it's really a series of APIs, different databases and services talking to one another. It's a really important part of, I say, modern business. Now, I talked about everyone reinventing the wheel. So everyone tries to develop a new meter. Why? People go out and get custom screen printed electrodes. Problem with custom screen printed electrodes is you're basically starting manufacturing almost from scratch, and the quality is just not there. You'll get the cost because people will do it for you, but you'll never get the quality. The app is already developed, and we can reskin it really quickly. The cloud, this cloud has been in 10 years in development. It's not easy to develop these kind of clouds, and then the API also exists as well. Now, the real value add from you is, what is that molecule that you're trying to target? Are you trying to target testosterone? Are you trying to target cortisol? Are you trying to target oncology drugs? Are you trying to detect proteins? I think this is C-reactive protein. Are you trying to detect fentanyl? What is it you're trying to detect? That's the first value add. And then what's the sample that you're trying to detect it in? Are you trying to detect opioids in saliva? Or are you trying to detect opioids in custom seizures? Or are you trying to detect creatinine in the blood or in the urine or something along those lines? Because essentially starting to test your sensors that you're trying to develop in those real sample situations is really important. But of course, most of the time you're held in the point where you're actually still trying to develop the fundamental technology. But the fundamental technology, I'm arguing, already exists. Then there's also the method file. This is another value add from that you can really add to this. It's just, you know, are you going to get this data from square wave photometry, differential pulse photometry, signal photometry? Is it potentiometric, open circuit potential? Is it amperometric? Is it multi-amperometric data? There's lots of ways of doing the method file. So the target molecule and the method file obviously, or the target molecule and the assay and the method file go together. The method file is easy for us to install into the app, I should say. And then there's the kind of calibration routine of, I think a lot of people stop when you look at scientific literature. Most of the time, people are actually testing in buffers. But you have to sort of, you know, test in the urine or test in the blood or test in the matrix. It could be seawater, fresh water. It could be soil. You have to start testing in the matrix and get a calibration line actually in the real samples. And then there's now you start asking the interesting questions. How are you going to serve that data to actual clients? You know, is it going to be, if it was glucose, is it 90 mg per dl? Is it 5 millimolar? Is it 900 ppm? 90 mg per dl flies well in the US. 5 millimolar works well in Europe. 900 parts per million, it works well with a McDonald's, because McDonald's can then tell whether there's too much glucose in that potato and it won't fry well. So you really got to think through those. And I think there's a real value add in, you know, addressing the customers. You know, you can add value just by getting the language right. You know, but most of the time people are so stuck up on the technology, they're not thinking through this kind of stuff. And then there's, how am I going to plug into the existing workflows? If you're working with the NHS in the UK, you know, how do you get the data into their workflows? If you're working with electronic diaries, how do you get the data off the sensor into those electronic diaries? So this kind of connectivity is where you can really add value. So you don't need to develop the whole technology in order to add value. What's the target? What's the assay? What's the method file? What's the calibration routine? How do I serve that data to the client? And how do I connect into the rest of the workflow? These are real value adds that people don't have time to work on because they're so busy trying to do the fundamentals. At ZP at the moment, we've been putting the glucose sensor onto the SenseItAll, the pH sensor, the potassium sensor, the nitrate sensor, the cortisol sensor, the testosterone sensor, the TAS sensors. But all of our sensors are basically addressable by this. This is what the hardware looks like as well. This is a real consumer experience. You see so many let's say, people are repositioning potentiostats into these kind of consumer type applications, and they look like potentiostats and they're horrible to use. Whereas this is quite elegant. There's only an on-off button. There's a LED that guides the user experience. So it's a really much more of an Apple experience. But actually that instrument is fully functional as a potentiostat. We don't care if it's amperometry, potentiometry, voltammetry, or impedance spectroscopy. We're quite happy either way. Something that's important is people used to talk about lab in a suitcase. I mean, I'm going to say lab today is lab in a box, and I've got an example here. You can see it's me. And what we're trying to do here is actually, if you open up that box, and this could be your customer, what does the manual look like in order to drive this? I've got the manual in my hand as well. This manual is super thin, and I've been really pleasantly surprised. Actually, we're shipping the box out here. People are flipping open this manual and actually getting straight on with it, because I think the manual, the thinness of the manual essentially reflects the ease with which this technology is to use. One of the first pages in the manual is actually there's those QR codes that I showed you earlier on, whether they've got a Apple phone or a Android phone, there's a QR code is in there. The turning it on is just so simple. It's just like, one button turns it on, but there's a whole bunch of LEDs that kind of guide that user experience. If you actually look in the box, there's a strip of sensors in this particular case, and there's the device itself. And the device, as you can see, is fairly small. And something that we do as well is if it's a powder. So, for example, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but some people want to do illicit drug detection. It could be a powder. So sometimes you have to put a buffer in there, because the one thing about electrochemistry is it does like to be in this sort of solution phase. So we do sometimes ship buffers. But I suppose that's an important point as well, that because we're ISO 13485, we are actually making all of this material in-house. So the electrodes are made in-house. We're generating the QR codes. The SenseItAll is made in-house. The buffers are made in-house. We're putting all that, the cloud is in-house. The app development is all in-house as well. And there's a row of the sensors as well. These sensors, you can just click them out, and you can then put them in the device. Now, the workflow is this. So the SenseItAll platform is, you've developed some sort of sensor or some idea for a sensor that will clip into the hardware. The hardware is driven by the app. You can watch the video later on and download the app. There's a QR code that tells the app what sensor is being used. You put the sensor into the meter, you put the sample onto the sensor, the app drives the meter gives the data back to the app. The raw signal, you can give the customer the value there and then on their phone, but the raw signal also goes to the cloud. And as I say, you've got to think about that user experience. Is it millimoles? Is it ppm? Raw signal remains in the cloud. ZP can't see it. It's behind your username and password, but you can share it with people. But that means you don't have to email it to people. There's nothing worse than emailing data, because you kind of lose custodianship on the data, and you also lose what version of data anyone is looking at any one time. But it's a really useful feature that actually the raw signal goes up to the cloud. So if you're doing creatinine, for example, and your testers are in Germany and you're in Belgium, every time they do a test, you can actually see that everything is working okay. And there's also an API built in already. So we're going to go to some demos now. So I think in order we're going to be doing probably chili, ginger, and potassium. Chili and ginger, super quick, super easy. Don't think of them as food ingredients tests. Think of them as much more generic. And then the potassium, you'll see that the workflow is more complicated. So you can see that, sometimes with your first products, the workflow can get simpler with time. But in the first instance, it might be more complicated than you would otherwise like. But it's better to start testing those things out with real users than you guessing. And maybe also people try to go for kind of perfection when actually perfection is not what the market needs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off my camera, turn off my microphone. My colleague's going to come on and do 3 live demos, and then I'll do a summary at the end. Okay, thanks, Garner.
Thank you, Martin. Hi, everyone. I'm Gane. I'm an engineer here in Zimmer and Peacock. And today I'll start with my demonstration for SenseItAll platform. I'll show you what I have with me. I have the SenseItAll instrument. I have 3 different sensors and 3 different QR codes, and also the solutions that we are planning to test. I have the mobile app with me. I have Android phone with me, but as Martin already mentioned, you can also have the iOS version. I have a pipette with me, and maybe we can just go ahead and start with the demonstration. So this is the app. This is the first that comes in the app when you turn it on. The first thing that we need to do is to scan the QR code. I will start with the Chile one. I'll just simply place it on top of the QR code. It just needs to focus. Yeah. Oh, it pick up the ginger one. Okay, let's run the ginger one first. So I'll just take sensor, and I will need to place it inside the device. So what we have here, the device is divided by 2 parts. This part is the moving one, and this is the main one. They click to each other with magnets, and this moving part goes up and down. So when we are placing the cartridge here and clicking it up, the connectors are joining to the sensor connector, and we will be ready for the measurement. But before that, we will need to turn on the device. There is a power button on the top. I'll press it for 2 seconds. And then now I see the LED light here is on. And also I see blue gliding LEDs here. That means that the device is turned on and it's ready to connect to mobile app through Bluetooth. Now I'll go back to the app. I'll just press the Bluetooth icon. Now the phone is searching for available devices. Now I see that the SIA 2020 is ready to be connected, and I check the serial number on the back of the device, and I see that this is indeed 2020 device. So I will click on it to connect. Yeah, now I see that device is connected, and I see that Ginger sensor QR code is scanned. And the next thing that we need to do is to change the test settings. So here there's a card which is tappable. I can click on it. And now it's asked me to insert test details. I can define the test sample ID. I'll just say that this is Ginger test 1. And I will need to define the cluster name. Cluster name, you can think of it as a folder name that will be shown in the Julie. So right now it's set up as SIA demo. So once the test is done, when we go to Julie, we will find the data inside the SIA demo cluster. And operator ID, I'll just set up as my name. Now it seems like it's ready. I'll go back. Yeah, I can already start to test. I will press go to assay, and I will get the instructions. And this instruction screen will be different for each analyte. So right now we are doing for Ginger. So I will place the Ginger sensor and click the cartridge, click the movable part up to connect the sensor. And I will show the solution that I have today. So the Ginger application comes with the Ginger buffer. And the sample that I wanted to test was the ginger shot solution. So I mixed ginger shot solution with the ginger buffer with 1:10 ratio. And now I have this solution that I want to test. And as we see on the first thing on the instruction screen, it asks us to choose the cell and dilution factor. And when I click on it, I can see that I have 4 different options, 10, 100,000, and 10,000. At this point, we will need to choose 10 because the solution that I already prepared is 1:10 ratio. This is done. Now it's asked me to place and lock the cartridge, which I already did, mix the sample well. And after that, I will need to pipette 50 microliter of the solution. Try to put it here, you can see. Now I will try to cover all the electrodes and I'll be careful to not scratch them. Yeah, it's done. Once it's done, I can press start the measurement. So this in particular assay takes around 30 seconds to run, which is quite fast. And what the device does at this time, it runs a cyclic voltammogram, and the data is transferred to the mobile app through Bluetooth. And the mobile app posts it in Julie, which is our cloud management and storage platform. Once it's posted in Julie, it gets analyzed and results are sent back to the mobile app. And in 4 seconds, we will see what are the results for this. Yeah, now we got results in micromolarity, in milligram per liter, and we also seen that upload was complete, and we can also verify that it was done correctly by checking the LEDs here. When it's green, it means the upload was complete, and we can see the results in Julie. I'll just change my screen to Julie. I will need to log in. Yeah, I'm already in a SIA demo cluster. And I see that SIA 2020 device is already here. And I will click on it. And I see my results here, Ginger test. When I click on that, I will see the whole report and I will see the raw data. We see the cyclic voltammogram first and second scans. And we also see how the data was analyzed. Now we see that it was analyzed by some peaks that we are detecting on this voltammogram. Yeah, I'll go back to phone. I will click done here and I will check that LEDs are white now. That means that device is ready for the next analyte to be tested. And I can scan the next QR code now. I'll just bring the, I'll bring the Geely QR code next to me so I can scan it. There's a small icon next to the sensor name. I will click on that. And now I can scan the next QR code. Yeah, as we see that the home screen is modified. Now we see that header is pink color, which represents the Geely sensor. We see that the Geely sensor part number is changed. And yeah, but device is connected, so we don't need to connect it again. But I'll go to the test settings to change the name. I will change it to Geely. And go to assay. Okay, so the solution that I want to test today is Tabasco sauce, and the chili pot buffer. I had it with me. This comes when we are ordering FoodSense kits, and we have these two solutions, and we could make the testing solution out of this. And I already prepared it. This is the one. And I made it with 1:10 ratio again as a date for the ginger shot solution. So from the select dilution factor input, I need to click on 10 again. And now it asks us to place and lock the sensor. In this case, it's the Geely sensor. I'm placing it here and clicking it up to make the connection. I'm mixing the sample well. I can also use the vortex to mix it. And I will pipette again 50 microliter of solution. Try to cover all the area, electrode area. I have one bubble there, just want to pop it. Yeah. Yeah, now I can start the measurement. So as we see, this assay is fast too. It takes 30 seconds. For Geely sensor, it also runs the cyclic voltammogram, and we will see the data in the Geely once the measurement is done. And once the data is uploaded in Julie, it also gets analyzed, and we see the results in the end. For chili measurement, we usually measure with Scoville heat units. Yeah, and we got 3,900 SHUs, which is quite correct, because Tabasco is claiming to have between 2,000 to 5,000 SHUs. I'll just remove this sensor too, and we can go back to Julie to find the chili data. I will click to refresh button. And because I didn't change the cluster name, it's again in the same folder. And I see the chili test report here. I am clicking on it, and we see the first scan and the second scan. And we also see how we analyze the peak to get the results. Okay, I'll move back, press the button, done, and we will be ready to test next sensor, which is potassium at this point. I'll just bring it closer to me and scan the QR code. Okay. Now, the next thing that I will do is I will change the test details, and instead of chili, I will write potassium. Yeah, and I will click go to assay button. And now I see that instructions are a little bit different in this case. And actually, I'll go back to show you one more thing. We see under the potassium sensor, there is a sensor part number, and there is a assay steps too. That means this assay will need to run 2 times. So when I go to assay, the first thing that I will need to do is to mix solutions and prepare them. So when we ordering potassium SenseItAll kit, it comes with 2 solutions, baseline solution and spiking solution. What we need to do is to mix these solutions with the sample solutions with 1-to-1 ratio. So right now I have 2 solutions prepared. This one is baseline solution mixed with my testing solution, and this one is spiking solution mixed with the sample solution. As the instruction says, mix equal parts of baseline solution and sample. I already did that, and now we will need to place and lock the cartridge. This is my potassium sensor. I will click and place it in place and click it up to make the connection. And I will pipette 50 microliter of this first solution that I prepared. The electrode area is a little bit bigger for this sensor, so I will make sure that I'm covering it properly. Yeah, and I will start the measurement. In this case, we are not running cyclic voltammogram, we are running open circuit potentiometry, and this takes 30 seconds as well. But after this, we will need to run the same measurement for the second solution. Now I got some tissues to remove the solution. I'll just bring it close so it will suck it up, the solution that is already on the sensor. This should be good enough. And now I will pipette my second solution, which is a spiking solution mixed with my sample solution. Again, I'm covering all the electrodes and clicking start the measurement. Okay. Once this one done, it will again upload the measurement data to Julie, and then the data for this both measurements will be analyzed, and we will get some results back in the screen.
And you can see that, in fact, we're not limited in workflows. Sometimes workflows are simple, just testing urine or testing saliva. Sometimes workflows are more complicated because you have to dissolve solids. And sometimes we're doing this kind of two-step workflow. But it's good because in the end, it's better to get out there in the real world and start testing whether people will accept your workflows rather than just guessing. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll show the data in Julie now. I will refresh the data and get the potassium test. Oh, it seems like I got some noise for the second solution. And maybe, Martin, if we had some time, I could run one more time, or you want to finish this?
No, I'll do a summary because I want to be super efficient with people's time. So I think if I could just do that, what I'll do is just make sure I can see my screen again. So I think what we were trying to demonstrate today is that if you want to get, so what you've seen today is quite a complicated workflow. I mean, ZP's been around for 10 years at this point, but in fact, you saw the interaction between screen printed electrodes that have been turned into biosensors. You saw the hardware, you saw the app is already deployed on those various stores. And you've seen that, in fact, that one device was going between all those different assays by just using a QR code. Douche, 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 and we went between the different assays. And there are more assays than just that. So I think you can kind of see that, in fact, this is a very flexible workflow. And yes, we can reskin that app quite quickly to be, let's say client facing. And I think, the problem that we're trying to solve is people spend too long developing whole technology stacks and actually never really impacting the real world. And so we want to have a sort of 2-year manifesto which says, if you're working with ZP and you're working with ZP technology stack, you should really be able to get to some sort of milestone in terms of CE marking or even clinical trials, within sort of 2 years, and don't spend 10 to 15 years because that could be half your career or a third of your career just doing something that ultimately has only a 10% chance of success. And we went through the whole technology stack today, so you can see that this is a multi-analyte system, and it's basically our business model is OEM, original equipment manufacturer. And so if you have an idea, you can add value through that idea. You can add value through the target analyte. You can add value through the target analyte in the particular sample matrix. You can add value through the calibration routine in order to turn raw signal actually into numbers. And you saw how powerful Julie was. That actually we could do all that analysis on the cloud, which is also part of your then value stream, because in fact you can make money from that cloud system as well. And you saw that in fact, we were able to then kind of also give the result more or less there and then on the phone. I did get a few emails through from some of the participants today, so I appreciate that. I'll send you all a quick copy of the of this, a recording. So when we finish, it will stop recording. We're doing another webinar on the 26th of March. There is another webinar this afternoon, but I'm not expecting you all to come to that. It'll just be a repeat of this one. But we are doing another one on the 26th of March. I know it says January here, but I'm going to keep on updating that. So if you want colleagues or investors, etc., to see the technology stack, then you can you can send them this particular link, which I'll also put in when I email you all later on. So thank you. So if you've got any questions, there's a contact us button here. I appreciate it's 10 to the hour now, at least in Europe. I appreciate some of you are in India. So if you have any questions, you'll get a personal email from me shortly with this recording, and I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, Ghana, thanks very much, and thank you very much for attending. We do appreciate you giving us your time this morning. Okay, thanks so much.